one of our research centers is doing a lot of work on underwater robotics. Now, AI can power it, but underwater robotics has lots of challenges. Physics comes into play, the water currents are unpredictable. So you will solve different problems.
AI is going to completely, explode. And he said it's like electricity. It's going to find itself in everything we do.
In the world of AI, there are new things they need to study, but there are skills which may become less relevant. So we also don't need to worry about the skills which are less relevant, but worry more about the skills which are more relevant. So I think that balance of left brain and right brain also needs to be solved at all levels.
Of late, we keep hearing that the latest coding language or the most popular coding language now is English,
We need to obviously be the use case capital of the world in AI, right? And I think there I have higher confidence. But we need to also, along with that, fortify our capabilities in the foundational blocks of AI.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Our Own Devices. This time we are going to talk again about AI, maybe in the context of India, and also about how does our educational framework adapt itself to cope with the challenges and the opportunities of AI. To talk about this, we have with us Neeraj Agarwal, who is the chair Asia Pacific at BCG Group and also the founder and trustee of Plaksha University. So, Mr. Agarwal, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Nandagopal. It's a pleasure.
So before we start on AI, can you give us a little bit of context about this, this great new university you've set up in Mohali?
Okay. Plaksha, which is set up in Mohali, is now physically up and running on ground since 2021. But the conceptualization of Plaksha happened 5-6 years before that, because the idea was to reimagine higher education. And a few of us came together at that stage, initially about 4 or 5 people, which then expanded over a period of time, to say that Indian higher education needed a new playbook. A playbook which is modifying what we teach, and the world was moving to a place where tech was very important, but interdisciplinarity of tech at the intersection of multiple areas was very important. We felt we needed to learn from the best across the world and also create a new playbook which goes beyond the playbook of the 60s and 70s when IITs and others were created. So I think that was very clear on our mind. And also to intermingle both tech, but also to combine it with solving some of the hardest problems in the context of India. So research on some of the hardest problems as well. And hence, that was one of the core drivers to us. And obviously, to modify also what we teach and how we admit students. So we looked at the entire value chain and redefined that. And now we are 4 years in. The first batch will graduate this summer. We couldn't be more excited. I think if we had an initial ask on where we wanted to be at this time, we proudly say that we've hit all those parameters. That doesn't mean that means there's a lot more to be done. The pressure is high, but we couldn't be more pleased about where we are at this stage of the journey, and also very excited about what the future lies ahead. And actually, the topic of AI, to be honest, fits very well into that, because naturally, that's one of the places when we started Plaksha, the world of AI was a lot more immature and has reached a stage of maturity that naturally fits into our sweet spot, but also forces us to think deeper about how we embrace this world.
I remember a conversation with Andrew Ng, who is the founder of Coursera, a few years back. I think it must have been a year or two before COVID. And he told me AI is going to completely, explode. And he said it's like electricity. It's going to find itself in everything we do. And we can say that we are already in that phase right now. And we know there's a lot more maybe happening here. But yours is a university, is an institution that's come up maybe after AI was already in the picture, maybe, before the Gen AI kind of, the L curve that happened. But is that a good reason why, let's say, your courses are sort of very different from what the traditional institutions would have, because you are maybe catering to a completely different world? You don't come with a lot of legacy and baggage of an IIT in that sense. I'm not saying it in a negative sense, but in a positive sense that you can take the story forward. So are you looking at it that way?
Yes, absolutely. So firstly, the world of AI technically has been around for a
few
period
decades.
of time. I remember in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was in grad school, I worked on AI a fair bit, but it was quite rudimentary back then, right? And suddenly to your L curve point or J curve point, whatever you want to call it, it has taken off, right? The one other thing I will draw parallel to is, you're right, it will become all pervasive like electricity. But I think the one difference maybe in Nandagopal, electricity, when it got invented to when it got really embraced, took about 40 years. It was a
Yeah.
slow adoption cycle.
Yeah.
Potentially, we are into a fast adoption cycle. I don't know how fast will fast be, but certainly
Yeah.
faster than that pace, right? Time will tell what really fast looks like. And oftentimes there is over exuberance in the early days. But I think we sometimes overestimate in the short term, but underestimate in the medium to long term as well, as is often said about technology. I believe the same for AI. Now, coming to Plaksha and AI. So, we were one of the first ones to start a master's in AI and machine learning program way back in actually 2018, 2019. So even before the formal campus of Plaksha started in 2021, we were doing this master's program. It used to be called Tech Leaders Fellowship because at that time, the 1 year masters was not allowed because the NEP had not come in place, the National Education
Mhm.
Policy. But we had this jointly done with UC Berkeley. And the specialization of that was AI and machine learning, right? So we were an early adopter of this. The other thing to what you're saying is the interdisciplinarity in all the majors. So one of the majors we have is AI and computer science. But the other one is what we call robotics and autonomous systems, which is at the intersection of computing, electronics, and mechanical. So that brings that together. The third one is biological system engineering, which is at the intersection of computing and biology. And the last one is data science, economics, and business. So that brings the power of, again, data science with economics and business. So we had done a lot of thinking, soul searching, and expert tapping before we came up with these four majors. And some of the best brains across the world said if we had to redesign our curriculum, we would design it this way. And I think now we look back, we feel those are the right design principles. And
Mhm.
in the world of tomorrow, they will be even more relevant going forward.
Of late, we keep hearing that the latest coding language or the most popular coding language now is English, because of how ChatGPT and all are making this entire thing about vibe coding becoming such a big thing. Anybody can code. How do you then sort of adapt engineering or education around technology where you are looking at the back end of things? How do you adapt? Is that becoming even more challenging now, or is it becoming easier?
So you're right, vibe coding and English is becoming popular. The way I see it is today, if 5 to 10 million people in the world genuinely write code, I think
Yeah.
in the world of tomorrow, it is not that the number will go down to zero. There will be a
Mhm.
couple of million people who will still write code.
Yeah.
But that code will provide the foundational element for everybody else to use English and other no-code language to
Mhm.
leverage that code. So it will
Yeah.
it will expose that piece of code to everybody, and hence, so there are two facets. There will be some people who will be really, really good at it, and
Yeah.
who will be needed. So you
Yeah.
need to cater to one of that. And the second set of people are who will be able to use this paradigm to build on top of it, right? To create upstack innovation. So I think we need our students will possibly, some will participate in the downstack innovation, and some will have
Yeah.
elements of the upstack innovation. Because the upstack innovation may mean code is easy, but you may need innovation on other aspects. So, for example, if you're doing biological system engineering, protein folding is a tough problem. So you may need the
Yeah.
intersection of that may be a problem. Or if you're doing robotics, the intersection of this and robotics may mean you need more capability. For example, one of our research centers is doing a lot of work on underwater robotics. Now, AI can
Mhm.
power it, but underwater robotics has lots of challenges. Physics comes into play, the water currents are unpredictable. So you will solve different problems on the foundational knowledge of this, is what I would say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it frees up time to solve and give more attention to some of those problems, which are
Yeah.
multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary in nature.
And how do you think India is placed in this entire sort of this hype cycle that we have now? Are we really adept at providing the kind of skill sets the world needs? Because we have done that for a few decades now, and very well. But as we move into this AI era, or we have already moved into the AI era, how do you think uh, our education systems, our 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 human resources are adapting to this opportunity?
See, the world of technology is a world of continuous disruption. right? I mean, it's an ever-changing cycle of the good old trilogy of, there's destruction and there's creation going on simultaneously, right? And I think you can never get cushy and comfortable about saying, I'm on the top of the hill and now I'm the king, right? Or I have arrived. I think you have to continuously embrace the new. And I feel it's not, I mean, in some sense, yes, there may be a bit of an over exuberance on AI, but it's a fundamental shift in capability, right? There is a world before AI and the world post AI. So I think it's a fundamental shift, and we need to, it's not like blockchain and others, which was also very big technologies, but not of that kind. I think it's a fundamental shift. So what we need to do is what is expedient for us as a nation is to make sure we are well versed on, and I think that the issue with AI is there's some people who are very good at it and they can have disproportionate impact. You may not need an army of people or millions of people to be very good at it, but you certainly need people in thousands or tens of thousands to be good at it. So how do we create that group of people? And there, I think today as a starting point, the disproportionate skills in the world are more in US and China. And we do have a gap. There is no two ways about it. I think there are many people who can use AI to create use cases on top of it. But to do foundational elements of AI, I think we have a gap. And I think we need to plug that gap quickly. That's what I would say. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So, on the top of the chain, you have Plaksha, which is, working on people, who will come up with the top end, right? But how do you percolate an AI education scenario in a country like India? How does it go to the smaller schools? A college in a small in small town India. How do you envision this sort of trickling down?
So I think you need to operate at all levels. In a typical pyramidal hierarchy or whatever, you need to have the top level skills. Then you need to have the skills to diffuse that to a much larger scale of people. But you also then need to catch people early, right? Like, people had, in my days, I studied computer science in undergrad, but, computer science was taught in high school at grade 11. By the time, a decade later, kids in grade 6 and 7 were learning the skills of computing and programming, right? So I think what we also need to solve that at multiple levels. To my mind, the push, what we are trying to do at Plaksha is to solve for the top end. You're right, and that's a very important problem to solve because that creates a multiplier. If you don't solve that, we are always dependent on other people for the multiplier, and so that's a critical problem to solve. That being said, I think if more corporates and enterprises use cases become more AI centric, that creates a natural push for the talent to embrace those skills. So I think we should have both a push and a pull cycle. So the push should, whether you call it push or pull, one side should come from the corporates and government, which are embracing AI, and people feel, wow, there's demand for it. The other side should come from, there's a set of our coursework across all universities, skilling institutes need to evolve very rapidly so that people become good users of AI. Right? Everybody doesn't need to be an innovator with AI at the top end, but there has to be multiple use cases. And then that also needs to percolate to our curriculum. And also what we don't need to study. In the world of AI, there are new things we need to study, but there are skills which may become less relevant. So we also don't need to worry about the skills which are less relevant, but worry more about the skills which are more relevant. So I think that balance of left brain and right brain also needs to be solved at all levels.
Yeah. Is there a layer here, and I might be very naive here to ask this question, but is there a layer here where you are looking at how you have the core education, the core teaching how to use the core technology, but do you also bring in a layer where you are saying, hey, how do you use this core technology to solve problems specific to countries like India? And in this case, AI, for instance, can actually plug a lot of gaps we have in the country, right? The language gap, the education gap, the medical gap. So is there something that when you're teaching kids in schools and colleges across India, that you also bring in, hey, look at this problem-solving ability that this new technology has?
So absolutely, Nandagopal. AI, to my mind, is horizontal. It's fundamental, it's horizontal, right? So hence it can be taken to any area. It can be taken to AI. I use the word AI plus X. At Plaksha, we use the word AI plus X. So AI
Yeah.
plus healthcare, AI plus education, AI plus sustainability. You can keep taking it to any use case, plus education itself, right? So
Yeah.
I think what it does is it unlocks possibilities in everything. And every time a new technology comes, I think it helps all countries, but it helps us and India to leapfrog even more.
Yeah.
It happened when digital technology came. We created frugal but very high quality technology with Aadhaar and other things, which are the foundational elements for many of the digital public infrastructure. I think this is the time for the next level foundational technology. Then, yes, you're rightly saying Sanskrit and other languages which have kind of got lost. India has had so many dialects and languages. It's also time, we are a very rich culture. It's also time for revival of some of those things, which it lends itself to. So the use cases are multifold. But we need to be thoughtful about, to my mind, there is an initial exuberance on the use cases. But I think I would say you need to go for fewer use cases in each vertical, but then design them
Yeah.
for places where you get the best bang for the buck. So take AI plus healthcare. You can use it for many things, but drug discovery is a big part.
Yeah.
I think using the limited availability for doctors and nurses to help them, multiply their influence could be a big part. Using
Yeah.
that for revenue cycle management in a hospital can be a big part. So pick the areas where there is most challenge in the healthcare today and use
Yeah.
that to solve. None of these are easy. Individually, all of
Mhm.
these are possible. So we need to
Yeah.
solve the biggest problems and not get, to be honest, you can lay out thousands of things which can be solved using AI in healthcare. But I think I would say the Pareto curve of the top 10 use cases in healthcare will have the most
Mhm.
materiality. So I would focus on
Okay.
those 10 cases which get 80-90% of the value first.
So to understand these gaps, how important is it to have the industry plugged into the academia in a way?
I mean, I think we're reaching a world where the best uh, of the innovation will happen if academia and industry
Mhm.
work hand in hand, right? And to us
Yeah.
at Plaksha, that comes very naturally because the founders all came from the industry. And
Industry.
I think and there are many of them across all industries. We have the best people from the startups, we have the best people from professional services, we have the best CEOs, people in India, people outside India. And I think that collaboration comes very naturally. And that was one of the excitements we had about it. But that template needs to be used more broadly in general, right?
Mhm.
I think there are
Yeah.
some other universities which have done a great job on this as well. And I think the more you, for example, I would say IIT Chennai has historically been exceptional at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
In India, and then
Their
outside there
accelerator
are,
and all of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
their accelerator, etc. But that framework of understanding, what is the problem the industry is trying to solve, and bringing the mindset of what is the innovation that is happening in academia and where is the valley of death in the middle, right? There's both sides have this, there's a middle where there's an impedance mismatch or the valley of death that has
Mhm.
to be solved and that gap has to be bridged. For example, the Institute for Imagining the Future we set up at Plaksha is
Yeah.
very much focused on using the power of AI to bridge those gaps where the early
Mhm.
stage innovation can be taken to applying it at industrial scale. That is very, very critical. And increasingly, as innovation moves to more fundamental deep tech kind of innovation, we as India need to leapfrog. And that's also the push that government is also doing through the Anusandhan National Research Foundation and some of the other topics. And I couldn't be more excited about that. And I think
Yeah.
that is needed. It is a fundamental mindset shift that we need to do. And historically, this has not been our strongest point, I would also say, as
Yeah.
a nation.
Yeah. So, as you look at the future, what do you think could become challenges or obstacles for you know uh, for India to find its rightful place in this entire scheme of things?
So the world is moving fast. The skill sets at the top are, and the multiplier on that is very high. So we need to be able to participate. So two things, if I backtrack for a second.
Yeah.
We need to obviously be the use case capital of the world in AI, right? And I think there I have higher confidence. But we need to also, along with that, fortify our capabilities in the foundational blocks of AI. Today it is LLMs and other engines. Tomorrow it could be something else. I think we need to operate on both the use case side of the world, but also the foundational elements of the world. The
Yeah.
foundational elements and skill building will take a longer time and effort. But if we aspire to reach a rightful position in Viksit Bharat and others. I think we cannot only relegate ourselves to the use case capital of the world. We need to do the and that's where at least my foundational belief is the and has to happen. Some people will argue, look, let's not worry about that. Those may become a commodity and we could be good enough if we have the use case capital. I think absolutely that's necessary to my mind, but not sufficient. We need to be both. And the use case comes naturally to us. We will get there fast. The foundational elements of the technology, we will make mistakes. When you get into any foundational element, it will not be a straight road. It will not be a linear path. It will be non-linear. We will fall multiple times, but we need to try and get better the next time around and get better. I think that's a path. I don't like these comparisons, but if I was to learn from China, which used to be like us maybe 15 years ago, invested in that and is benefiting from some of the investments made over the last decade and decade plus. And I think this DeepSeek moment which happened was not a mere accident, was a result of many efforts which culminated into something of that nature. So I think my belief is like the Sputnik moment in when it happened, created the National Science Foundation and DARPA and other things in US in a very foundational way. This DeepSeek moment should encourage us to create our own equivalent, and which is what the government of India is trying to do. And I'm very excited. And I wish that we can do that even faster in a more compressed time frame. So that's what I feel.
If I can end on a positive note, what excites you the most about these times?
I think, firstly, I hope I've been positive all along. I mean, I'm a natural optimist. I'm a natural optimist. What excites me the most about these times is I think what is at the disposal of humans is a technology which allows you to imagine possibilities which were never there before, right? Which allows you to magnify human capability in a way which was never there before. And hence, there are so many unsolved problems in the world which we feel we could in reasonable time find solutions to. For example, just cancer is an example of that. I feel, with the technology at our hand, we could solve that at one level, solve problems like that in not so distant future. But equally, there's a big gap between what the quality of life and quality of care and other things people get at the upper end of the pyramid to the lower income pyramid. And I think it will lift the water level also for all, because everybody starts getting, it's a bit like once everybody got telecom connectivity, and the cost came down, everybody benefited from that. So I feel there is a bit of a groundswell moment also of lifting the tide, which will also happen. And I feel very excited about that for us as a nation. Obviously, there are issues about, if the technology becomes so efficient, what's the role, how do you consume all the labor and all that? I mean, that's a topic for another time, perhaps, but that's something which also needs introspection in this context.
So, Mr. Agarwal, thanks for being on the show. It was wonderful listening to you. And again, a lot of insight on how our educational system is sort of adapting and adopting AI in these exciting times that we live in.
Nandagopal, it's a pleasure. And I love our own devices show and wish you all the very best and look forward to staying in touch.
So we'll be back again next week with another guest, lot more knowledge and insight. Till then, we are available everywhere you listen to your pods.